Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health. How the heck are you doing today? Hope you're doing great. Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the podcast, where we're going to get a little controversial, and we're going to talk about politics. And there might be some feelings hurt, there might be some feelings won over, or you just might not give a shit, or you might fall asleep, or you might be making love to your special someone while you listen to my soothing, sounding, nasally, Jewy voice over the sweet airwaves of iTunes or Stitcher or CastBox or whatever you're listening to this on. It's going to be a doozy. So thank you for tuning in. By the way, if you are new here to the podcast, please take a hot second, hit the subscribe button right there in your podcast player, no matter what you're listening to this is. It's 2018. Every podcast player gives you the ability to subscribe, so make sure you subscribe so you get this podcast every time it comes out, which is about 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And then go find me on all the social mediums, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just search Holistic A-Hole. I'm right there. I'm the only Holistic A-Hole you're going to find. And go over to my YouTube page because I'm putting up a whole bunch of videos up there, Holistic A-Hole. And get in the circle, communicate, react. Let me know what you think. I've been hearing from a lot of the a-holes out there lately, getting a lot of good feedback, and it helps me put more content out for you guys that I know you want to hear because, hey, baby, I'm in it for you. Any other business? No. Let's just get down to brass ass tacks here. So, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about on this podcast, and I had some ideas floating around in my head. And then I saw the other day that there was a Democratic primary election here in good old New York City. And turns out that there was this young lady, 28-year-old, what's her name? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 28 years old, defeats this old incumbent Democrat, Joseph Crowley. And it's a big deal because not only did she beat this guy in the Democratic primary here in New York City, I believe for the 14th, the 14th district or something? For U.S. Congress, New York 14. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what that means. But it's for the House of Representatives, and I believe that represents the Bronx and Queens. And as a resident of Queens, have no fear, I did not vote. I didn't even know there was an election. That's how up-to-date on this stuff I am. And I'm not going to complain, I'm not going to be one of these people who doesn't vote and then just starts complaining about everything. What I want to do is actually give this young lady some major props, man. Some big time props because I know nothing about her campaign. I didn't know this was even a campaign that was happening. But to be a 28-year-old, fairly inexperienced, quote unquote politician, and I guess she's never worked in politics, but apparently she was she helped out with the Bernie Sanders campaign, 2 years ago, and to just show up to be a 28-year-old millennial Latin American woman, which I'm just assuming that's what she goes by because that's what all the news is saying, to come in and defeat just an old crusty Democrat like this guy Joseph Crowley, who's been in office I think for like 20 years or something. And and by the way, in that 20 years or whatever it's been, supposedly he hasn't even been challenged, Like there might be, some guy who owns a farm in Elmhurst or something who comes forward and is like, I believe in lower taxes. And this guy just blows him out of the water every single time. Because in these primaries, let's face it, not a lot of people vote, like me, for instance. I don't vote. Most people don't vote in these primaries because it's not sexy. It's not Trump Clinton. It's not, the big presidential or even like the big, midterm elections or whatever, even if not even that many people show up to vote for those. So, as long as this guy has a whole bunch of his signs up and down the street and he can afford just to be in your face a little bit more than the challenger, it's usually pretty much in the bag. That's what I've realized, too, as I've gotten older with politics. And when you look at these guys like, John McCain and Dianne Feinstein and Lindsey Graham and just these old fucking crusty politicians who have been in office since like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. It's just they just represent these counties, or they're in the Senate, and their name is just so much stronger, and they have so much more money to just put more signs in front of people so that, when you're one of these people who does go and vote, and you're like, well, who do I vote for? The first thing you think about is the signs that you saw just driving up into the into the elementary school or wherever you're voting, And supposedly this guy raised like $3 million. Which is a lot of money, dude. It's a lot of money for a poor Democrat who represents the poor people and the needy people in this country. You just pull $3 million out of your ass to run an election in June. This, to me, that's like the number one problem with the Democrats, and it's what has essentially just turned my whole perspective of the whole thing around. But, I've talked a lot about politics and Trump and, the way I feel about certain things. And, I don't even know where I fall anymore. I've never been a Republican. I've never voted Republican. But as I get older, I tend to lean more towards conservative values, because I think you just learn a lot of shit as you get older, and you deal with life experiences. And it's not to say I am a Republican, and even the Republican Party is full on changing from what it used to be. It's not the same Republican Party today. If anything, the Republican Party is starting to become more and more libertarian, as you talk to more and more younger people who are in my age bracket, who are in their, early 30s, right? Or late 20s, and they've been burned by the financial collapse, or they've been burned by insurance, or they've been burned by just, you name the problem that usually was built around, like these neoliberal policies. It's like, yeah, some people you just turn more conservative. You just care more about not wasting money on shit. But the other thing's happening, the same thing's happening in the Democratic Party now, because the biggest thing when Trump got elected was, okay, well, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen to the Democrats? The Democrats are, is Hillary Clinton represent the Democrats, or is that a dying wing now? What about the Bernie wing? Because the Bernie wing is now looking to be what propels the liberals and the Democrats into the future. And quite frankly, I think it's 100% necessary. 2 years ago, I was all about Bernie. I got into it. I caught the wave, and it wasn't, it's not even like I looked that far into the guy, just like what he was talking about. It's like finally somebody's talking about ending wars, Ron Paul talked about this, but just got fucking buried in this kind of last big push for just old, 40-year-old, just bullshit politics. Ron Paul, his ideas are great. Yeah, he's got some faults, but every single one of these guys does. Or girls, ladies, women, men, whatever, trans, whatever it is now. But I do find it interesting. I do find it so interesting that it's now we've hit a point, and probably a lot of it has to do with just the amount of information, social media alone, Google, Wikipedia, WikiLeaks. Every podcast or, big name, whatever. It's just changing the whole conversation. And so I give this lady, this woman props, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because she ran, I guess, a bootstrapped campaign, went up against Goliath and defeated him. And a lot of it is because she was running on very similar ideals that you would have found in the Bernie Sanders campaign. So I know this is a health-oriented podcast. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on politics because, quite frankly, I can talk a lot for a long time, and I don't want to alienate anybody. And it's not that I'm afraid to talk about this stuff. I do quite a bit, but I do want to keep it focused on the healthcare issue because this is why I do this podcast in the first place, is just the frustration and just the conversations that need to happen that I don't feel are happening around healthcare. And my biggest concern when I look at this democratic socialist party or ideology, whatever you want to call it, for as slammed as socialism gets, you talk to somebody on the right, they're going to be like, socialism's never worked. It's buried every country where they've done it in. Look at Venezuela. Look at, the Europeans. Look at this. Look at that. Look at the Soviet Union, whatever. I don't even know what technically constitutes socialism to begin with. But when people start talking about this idea of Medicare for everybody and free healthcare, I do take issue with it. Because, as some of you loyal listeners know, I worked in healthcare for a long time, and I understand this on a different level. Do I understand everything about healthcare? Of course not. There's people who have doctorates in healthcare who still don't understand what healthcare is or does, or even figuring out the right policies. It's such an intricate, complicated system. And this is my number one beef with it, which is when you start saying free healthcare for everybody. Yeah, that would be such a great thing. It would be such a great thing to say, oh my God, I'm sick. I got the flu. I have a cold. I broke my arm. I feel depressed, I have diabetes, whatever. I have cancer. I just want to go to the doctor. I just want to go to the hospital and get it taken care of. Yeah, that is a beautiful thing to think that if we lived in a society that could handle that would be such a great thing, right? That we could just provide healthcare for everybody. And once everybody's healthy, then we can have an actual thriving culture, right? First of all, there's no proof that can even happen. There's no actual studies or anywhere that you can just say like, hey, here's a society where they have free healthcare and look how much everybody's thriving. Look how much everybody contributes. Look how great their GDP is. Look at all the innovation and inventions and, quality of life everybody has, because we can just all go to the doctor. Could it happen? Could we have the ability for everybody to just have free healthcare? Yeah, we could. If we ended all of our wars, if we took all of that money that we waste, just trillions of dollars, if we took trillions of dollars from the Pentagon's budget and from, all this useless bombs and all the people we're blowing up and murdering and killing and all the money the fucking FBI squanders away and all the money that we give to the Wall Street banker. Yeah, if we took all that money and put it just into healthcare and said, okay, look, everybody now has like what, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year to use on healthcare. Could it work? Probably, yeah. Most definitely it could. But it's not a real thing. That's not a real thing that can just happen, right? I'm rooting for it, but it's not a real thing, You can't just start giving people, because then you start to deal with, especially here in America, because even though everybody is created equal in this country, everybody's not equal. Especially in the year 2018, with the food supply we have, with all of the chemicals all over everywhere you go, from the food, the water, the air, to the materials in your own walls, to the plastics that you put in your mouth and that's in the ocean, and just, I mean, every factor you put in there, the way that people's bodies react, everybody's bodies are different. People are far sicker than other people. I'm incredibly healthy, but I do have things that pop up. Would I love to be able to go to the doctor and get it taken care of? You fucking better believe your ass. But the problem is, there's people who are much sicker than me who are going to the doctor on a weekly freaking basis or on a monthly basis. There's people who, they get the sniffles and they run to the doctor to go get antibiotics. And by the way, there's two things wrong with that. Number one, you should have the wherewithal to be able to deal with the sniffles or strep throat or a sore throat or a cold on your own. Number two, antibiotics are not doing you any good whatsoever. They're actually, in the long run, making you worse off and making you sicker and then causing you to have to go back, okay? This is coming from somebody who spent a lot of time in my youth on antibiotics because fucking, let's face it, doctors just pass those things out like candy, How do I figure this out? Because here's the thing too that we forget about doctors. You as a patient are not allowed to go into a doctor's office without them giving you a pill or a prescription to leave with. Very, 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 very rarely do people go to the doctor unless it's like a routine checkup. And even these are kind of suspect. But very rarely do people go to the doctor and then the doctor's like, "Oh, you got strep throat, or you got the flu. You know what you should do? You should just rest. Just rest." Well, what about like some antibiotics? Can I get some antibiotics? Can I get some like some high strength cold and flu medicine? Maybe like a nasal shot, like a nasal drip thing. What is it? Nasal spray or something? And the doctor's like, no. You know what you can do? You can just rely on your immune system because your immune system is very strong and evolutionarily built to be able to handle this flu infection. No doctor is telling you that. No doctor's telling you, "Oh, you know what you need more of? You need more vitamin C. And here's a nutrition plan to help you increase your vitamin C." No doctor's looking at you and going, "Oh, you're deficient in some B vitamins. You're deficient in magnesium. And that's what's causing, your joints to be achy. That's what's causing your lack of sleep. Oh, you know what you need more of, actually? You need more sleep because that's where your body does most of its repair work." No doctor is allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do that. They have quotas of medication that they're supposed to prescribe to people. They're literally blackmailed by insurance companies because insurance companies tell doctors that you have to hit this quota of prescriptions of this medication every month. And if you don't hit this prescription every month, well, guess what's going to happen? We are not going to include you in our network for the next year. And if you don't get into an insurance company's network for a doctor, that's a death sentence. That's you literally boarding up your windows and saying, "Well, it was fun. It was fun being a doctor. I guess I'll I don't know, backpack through Europe. I guess that sounds like fun. I guess maybe join a bowling league or something because I can't be a doctor anymore because Blue Cross won't send me any patients anymore." This is the reality of the healthcare system. It's so fucked. It's so incredibly fucked. And so I guess the big thing that I'm getting at here, without going too far off on these tangents, which I tend to do, but the big thing is that we're conflating this idea between free healthcare and good healthcare because there's a real big difference. There's a real big difference. Anybody can just have healthcare. I could have Obamacare right now. Me and the lovely Miss A-hole, we are straight up middle class. Like we are like right in the freaking middle class, which is a curse. It's a curse in this country to be in the middle class because you're not rich enough to be able to afford all the shit you want and to be able to just pay off all your bills, but you're not poor enough to get any kind of subsistence. So what happens is you get in that just Goldilocks zone of getting fucked in the ass by the system. So especially living in New York State, to have Obamacare is just such an insane amount. And even if we took that amount, we have such an insanely high deductible that we have to pay before the insurance even kicks in. And then when the insurance kicks in, it only covers like 70% of the bill. And then there's plenty of doctors and hospitals that won't even take it, right? So I guess that's why I don't have healthcare. But going back to good healthcare and bad healthcare. Here's my question for everybody who just thinks that, hey, let's let the government just pay for our healthcare. Where are all the doctors coming from who are just going to show up and take care of all the people who are going to need healthcare once everybody has healthcare? Once all the people who now have health insurance and they say, sweet, I can go to the doctor. Where are all those doctors going to come from? Because let me tell you something. A couple months ago, went and got blood taken. Okay, here's the beauty of not having health insurance. Little fun healthcare fact: you don't have to have health insurance for a doctor to see you. You can go to the doctor, and they're going to ask you, who's your insurance? And you can say, I don't have insurance. And then you know what they say? They go, oh, well, the no insurance rate is like $100 or something. Okay, fine. You don't get that, whatever. Or, maybe if you had insurance, it would be $20. Okay, well, guess what you didn't do? You didn't pay all of your premiums for the last year. So you're not like $1,000 plus in the hole. Okay, so you spend $100 to go to the doctor. Then you go get all your doctor's stuff done. I got blood taken, right? Here's what happened. They submitted my bill to the lab, and the bill came back at like $400 or $500. And then here's what I did. I called up the lab and they are like, well, if you don't pay the bill, if you don't have insurance, then we have to send you to collections. And I go, well, I don't want to go to collections. Can I just pay you right now with a card? And they'll go, sure. The no insurance rate is $100. So what I did is I just cut out all the middlemen and just negotiated my own price, which was far less than I was ever going to pay for health insurance. Because the thing is, with all of these medical care providers, they're also businesses, and they don't want to have your bad debt on their books for their accounts receivables. Basically, what I'm saying is they don't want to have people who owe them money because they have to spend more money to collect it. So if you just cut them a deal for services already rendered, there's nothing they can do. You can just pay them a far lower amount. So it's not like if you don't have insurance, you're in an impossible situation to begin with. But I digress. Go back into the difference between good healthcare and bad healthcare. There's a doctor's office here that I went to get my blood taken. I sat in that motherfucker's office for 2.5 hours before I could ever get seen. And let me tell you something. That dude has 15 minutes. 15 minutes is what they give doctors to see patients. You're not sitting there with your doctor for an hour and a half talking about your health. He has a certain line of questions, a certain protocol to get to the bottom as quickly as possible as to what he thinks you might have. So this is where you get a lot of this like misdiagnosis. This is where you need to go back and get second and third and fourth opinions. I mean, let's be honest. You, the listener, you, the great a-hole listening to this podcast right now, how many times have you gone to a doctor and he gave you some diagnosis and then gave you a medication, gave you a prescription, and then that prescription didn't do shit? It might have even made the problem worse. And then what did you do? You had to take a day off work, or you had to take time off work, and you had to go to another freaking doctor's appointment. And then this doctor tells you, yeah, you know what you need to do? You need to go see a specialist. So then what he does is he writes you a prescription or writes you an order to go see a specialist. And you're like, what the a specialist? Then you go to the specialist, and then the specialist is like, oh yeah, you know what you have? You have freaking hypertension. And you're like, how? And you're like, oh, it's simple. You have you have this spot on your arm. And you're like, I was fucking born with that spot. And they're like, yeah, it means you have hypertension. So here's 3 pharmaceuticals you could take and just fill them up every 2 weeks. And then, next thing you know, you have to go to the pharmacy now to go get your prescriptions filled. And turns out your insurance doesn't cover one of the prescriptions. So now not only have you seen 3 doctors and now have 3 prescriptions, your insurance doesn't cover one of those prescriptions, and you don't even know if you need that prescription to begin with because you didn't even know the problem that the specialist told you had was even a problem that you could possibly have to begin with. So this is just a constant rigmarole of seeing doctors because the medical system is inherently flawed because of the way it's set up at its fundamental core. It's not because people don't have free health insurance. It's because people know nothing about nutrition and have no ability to deal with their own medical issues in an appropriate way. It has nothing to do with doctors. It has nothing to do with health insurance. It's a fundamental flaw in the system. It's going to keep going because of how incredibly fucked our whole society is as far as the food supply, people not knowing the right food to eat, not knowing the difference between organic, non-organic, not understanding what GMOs actually do to the body, not understanding how cholesterol works, not understanding how blood sugar works, not understanding the value of sleep. I mean, how many people are sleep deprived, going off of 3, 4, 5 coffees a day, needing their antidepressants, needing their, little Debbie cakes, smoking cigarettes. I mean, Jesus Christ, how can we have free healthcare if cigarettes are still legal? How can we have free healthcare if people are still smoking cigarettes? I mean, it's not, people joke around, it's the cancer stick. It's not just the cancer stick. It's just the complete debilitation of any kind of functionality in your body stick. That's what it is, dude. Go to they just open up a freaking ice cream parlor right around the corner from me, and there's just lines out the door every single night, I'm not going to tell people you can't have ice cream, but if people understood what dairy just does to your freaking body, the amount of inflammation it causes, the amount of mucus it causes, how it makes cancer cells grow, what the sugar does to your fucking entire being, dude. It just can't happen. It's not that I don't want it to happen. Please don't confuse me saying it can't happen with I don't want it to happen. I imagine it, I have a fantasy in my mind that, one day all of this shit will be right, Cigarettes will be illegal. Weed will be legal. Every drug will be legal because why aren't they? If you're going to do heroin, you're going to do heroin. So give people good quality heroin. If you're going to smoke weed, let people smoke weed. Stop making it illegal. Stop throwing people in jail. Stop making people, lose their jobs and their well-being because they do drugs or whatever. That has nothing to do with this conversation. But stop putting people on opioids. Stop putting people on these fucking crazy anti-anxiety medications that not only fuck with your mind, but they fuck with your gut. And when your gut gets fucked with, your whole body's completely out of balance. Stop having people take 15 different probiotics when it just makes the problem even worse. You can't have free healthcare because we just can't afford it. If we gave everybody free healthcare, this country would go broke 20 times over before people even began to start thinking about feeling better. There are people who are in their 30s and early 40s who are taking double-digit pills and pharmaceuticals every single day just to get the fuck out of bed. It's an epidemic, not again because of health insurance. It's an epidemic because in this country, we don't value actual, real, functional health. And people who do value health, get made fun of, get ridiculed. Live your life. Drink some beer. Eat some cotton candy. Have, a fucking grain-fed burger. Stop eating salad. You're so boring. Come on, let's just drink 4 times a week. Come on, smoke a pack of cigarettes. Don't be so uptight. It just doesn't work, dude. Sorry. It doesn't. Look, so I give props to this girl, man. Good for you. Like, I think if nothing else, it's the same thing with Trump. I get a lot of shit because I support Trump. I don't support Trump because I love everything, all of his policies. I think so many of his policies are just flawed and stupid. And, if sometimes it sounds like I'm listening, to a fucking grandpa in the 1950s talk about what America needs and all this stuff. But I think he hits it out of the park on some things. But I think more than anything else, we're getting rid of this old guard that has done nothing but bad for our country. I think we're changing it over. And yeah, the fact that there is going to be a millennial in Congress, that there's going to be a Latina, a Hispanic woman in her 20s in the House of Representatives representing my county, Queens. I think that's stellar, dude. I think it's a start. I'm not jumping on the bandwagon and saying, hey, everything's going to be better. Everyone's going to have a universal income and universal healthcare. And let me tell you something, man. Like I just said, that can all go horribly wrong. And it's not because I'm a Republican and I want poor people to starve and I don't want poor people to get Medicaid. I believe in Medicaid. I believe in Medicare. But the idea, just the blatant idea that everybody just needs free health insurance and that's just going to make everything better, it's just so wrong in so many ways. So I would love to know what you think about this, because this is such a hot topic, and this is definitely not going to be the last time I talk about this. But I don't want to talk about this into a vacuum. I want to know what you, the listener, think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I good on some things? Am I completely missing it on the other? Because I know I didn't cover the whole thing. I only talked for 30 minutes here, but I want to know, what pieces do you have to fill into this conversation? Shoot me a line on Facebook, shoot me an Instagram message, take a picture of your doctor's office, and be like, look at this piece of crap doctor's office with literally 20 people in the waiting room. This is what free health insurance looks like. If any of this stuff comes up, shoot me an Instagram, tag me in your Instagram story at Holistic A-Hole, tweet at me at Holistic A-Hole. Again, find me on Facebook, Holistic A-Hole, YouTube, Holistic A-Hole. And of course, if you love the podcast, if you really enjoyed it, if you're in the middle of a Holistic A-Hole binge, go on to iTunes, give me a 5-star review, and put a nice little note in there. And however I can, know in my holistic heart, I'm very grateful for your listenership, and I'll do my best to never let you down. So thanks for listening, you guys. Keep listening. Share this with people you know and love who are interested in this sort of thing, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.